It's funny when you think about Lonzo Ball and you think about this kid who's about ready to go to the NBA, probably ends up being a Los Angeles Laker, playing in that massive media market for a marquee NBA franchise. He's going to have a lot of pressure on him and so on and so forth. But you look at the kid and you say, there's quite a bit to like about him. He's 6'6", with elite point guard skills, outstanding instincts and floor awareness, incredible open court speed, a guy that was a pretty good shooter, even with the funky jump shot. Even when you look at some of the concerns you have about his game, like his lack of big time ball handling skills, the mechanics of his shot, and whether or not he can get it off at the NBA level, sometimes his lack of desire to me to dominate and especially play defensively on a consistent basis. There's just so many positives, even defensively. His ability to get his hands in the passing lane, his ability to know where he is on the floor at all times. You look at the kid and you see a marquee prospect. You see a kid that could, in theory, on the court, be a franchise changer, be a guy that you could build a championship contending team around. But as we know, when it comes to Lonzo Ball, so much of the talk gets away from the player, the prospect, the kid, and ultimately gravitates towards the dad, Lavar Ball, to which we get all types of people thinking about, whether or not they would want to draft Lonzo Ball because of the Lavar Ball factor. Would you really want this kid around the organization because of the dad? Would you want to deal with this kid because of the dad? And it's funny how so often everything about Lonzo Ball ultimately ties back into his father, Lavar Ball, to where you really get to the point of wondering, how is Lavar Ball affecting Lonzo Ball? And it's interesting. You'll see some people try to justify some of the things that Lavar says or does by saying he's actually in his kids' lives. And in general, that is true, but that is really a sad indictment of our society as a whole. If one of the things that we get to praise is the fact that he's actually in his kids' lives, like he actually raised his kids. Like it should be a given, that should be an understood, that should be a requirement, a demandment of making babies. But that's one of the things that people will call out, is that at least he's in his kids' lives. Well, that's more of an indictment in our society than it is a true positive for LeVar Ball. Because frankly, you do have plenty of parents that are in their kids' lives and they're pieces of shit. Just saying. You could also argue that LeVar Ball has done a good job of elevating Lonzo's draft profile and his profile as a player and as a prospect in general. And there probably is something to be said about that. Because even with some of the marquee names in recent years' drafts that have come out, the truth of the matter is that Lonzo Ball, to me, for my money, my opinion, is the most talked about draft prospect since LeBron James. I'll put anybody up against it. In terms of name being out there in the media, the discussion points, and so on and so forth, Lonzo Ball is the most talked about NBA draft prospect we've seen in 14 years, in my estimation. So you could argue that that is in a direct relation to some of the stuff that LeVar Ball has said and done off the court, and that is true. You could also look at when you're trying to defend LeVar Ball and some of these things, you could talk about how the media doesn't love a strong black man stating his opinion. And sure, there is going to be something to be said about that, as there always is. But that is a very narrow vision of things and lacks the full and complete context for understanding. It's one thing to say it's just a strong black man saying something, as opposed to this is just a guy, whoever he is, just saying idiotic, dumb shit. You know, just because he's black doesn't mean he's done saying dumb and idiotic shit. But that doesn't give him a pass or an excuse either. It's the same thing if Lonzo Ball wasn't just biracial, if he was 100% white and both his mom and dad were white and his dad, LeVar, was white and was saying the same shit, it would still be dumb, idiotic, stupid shit, independent of the racial component. You could also argue that a lot of this has been blown up by the media, which we know it has been because the media loves the intention, because it's always the feeling of controversy creates cash, which I think is part of the mindset of LeVar Ball, and it goes in lockstep with the sports media of the day. It's all about creating sensationalism. It's all about doing these type of things, trying to get into a mindset of controversy, creating cash, because frankly, sometimes it does, at least in the short term. So you'll see these defenses of LeVar Ball, and you'll hear some of these positives about him. He's trying to protect his kids. He's trying to look out for his kids. Maybe. I mean, the guy says some really stupid shit, but I don't think him saying stupid shit in and of itself makes him bad for Lonzo. Like, the talking about beating Jordan one-on-one. The dude couldn't even beat out other players on his team back in college at Washington State to average more than 2.2 points per game in his career. That's one of those ones you just laugh it off. It's so fucking stupid. It's not even worth entertaining. But, of course, the media makes that a talking point. But that's not something that's fundamentally harmful because it's just idiotic. You know, the thing about Lonzo taking Steph Curry's place in the Warriors being better and Lonzo being better than Steph Curry. Again, that's dumb shit that's not based in any modicum of reality whatsoever. So why would anybody pay attention to that? You know, I'm sure plenty of people paid attention to the fact when you said UCLA lost because of the fact they had 3 white players. Well, 3.5 if you count Lonzo. Let's be real here. But it's funny how before they played Kentucky in the Sweet 16, he was talking about they would beat Kentucky because they were too quick. And then all of a sudden afterwards when they lost, instead of talking about the fact that De'Aaron Fox just completely destroyed Lonzo in UCLA, let's blame the white guys. I mean, it was a dumb statement, but let's face it. When it comes to the racial component in this country, there are a lot of elements, both white and black, that are less than desirable in terms of some of the things that are still said to this day. So I won't fundamentally get on the guy too much for saying it because, again, it's ultimately just something stupid that somebody says. And you have a lot of this over the year, precedent of both white and black athletes saying a lot of dumb, stupid shit. It doesn't mean that they aren't good players. It doesn't mean that you can't win games with them. And especially, it's not even the athlete saying it, it's the athlete's dad that's saying it. When we start to get a little carried away with it, I mean, and I'll defend him when it comes to the shit on Colin Cowherd's show with Christine Leahy. One, she wasn't conducting the interview. So who gives a fuck what she says? Number 2, we all know how she got her job and why she has her job with no discernible talent whatsoever. So don't give me that fucking shit. And 3, people can talk shit to him, but he can't respond. Look, LeVar Ball says a lot of dumb, ignorant shit. And I will say my piece about some of the dumb, stupid-ass things he says. But at the end of the day, if you're coming at him talking about how he doesn't respect women, you're talking about his parenting skills, whether they are true or not is inconsequential. The guy has a right to respond. And then when the guy responds, you're going to sit there and try and twist it and talk about how he threatened you. Oh, shut the fuck up, you stupid heifer. Nobody gives a shit about that blonde bimbo. Well, some people do, but we know why. Newsflash. Just because you're trying to support the chick doesn't mean you're going to get laid by her, okay? You have no chance to fuck her. Get it through your thick skulls. Grow a set and realize what the fuck is going on here. I mean, seriously. So I'll defend him on that shit. But while some of the things he said have been really stupid and in theory shouldn't be that harmful, and sometimes he will get shit because he's LeVar Ball and because of that history, some of the dumb crap he says, when something happens where he deserves to be defended and he's not in the wrong, he's still going to be in the wrong. That's just the way it is. LeVar Ball's mouth and actions can potentially hurt Lonzo Ball. It could potentially affect his draft position, which would cost him money. Now look, he probably still gets drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers 2nd overall. So it's not going to cost him very much. But if the Lakers all of a sudden decided they didn't want him, and the Boston Celtics at number 1 decided they didn't want him, then maybe the Philadelphia 76ers at number 3 might say, we don't want him because we don't want the distraction of dad. And if all of a sudden Lonzo Ball, if Lonzo would start to drop on the draft boards even a little bit, it would be only directly related to his father's antics and concerned about his father's antics with the son on an NBA roster. You're potentially costing your kid a couple of $1 million. If you love your kid, you would never do anything you would think to potentially cost your kid millions of dollars. but LeVar Ball is and doing it consistently. This could also impact Lonzo's ability to command and lead an NBA locker room and lead a team on the floor. Because if he's going to be thought of as LeVar's little bitch boy, if he's going to be thought of as a pussy who can't stand up to his dad, then why are other grown men that are multi-millionaires many times over going to respect this young punk? And that's the way they're going to look at it. You can't even get your dad in line. I'm not going to follow you. You can't even lead yourself. How the hell are you going to lead anybody else? It could also potentially undercut the head coach and organization where Lonzo Ball would play. Like you look at the Lakers with Luke Walton. If LeVar Ball is trying to sit there and tell Lonzo not to listen to Luke Walton and do it the way he told him to, like he does with his fucking kids in high school and has been doing for years, to the point where he undercut the high school coach and ultimately got him fired. And we all know that's what the hell happened. When the coach is saying one thing and the dad's in the stands sitting there saying, no, do it this way, the kids are naturally going to gravitate towards the dad. Because again, his profile as a college player at Washington State with his 2.2 points per game was so commandingly awesome that he merits being worth listening to. Give me a fucking break. But there is that real significant concern that if LeVar Ball doesn't like something that's going on in the organization, that he could feed into Lonzo's mind like a manipulative woman would and sit there and affect Lonzo Ball's desire to play. You know, Lonzo might not care as much. He might give up on a season. LeVar Ball might be saying, hey, you're getting ready to enter free agency, buddy. This team's not making the playoffs. Don't even bother playing, and most certainly don't play hard. And then could be going behind the back of the organization talking about this and talking about that. There's just all types of issues that could potentially come afoot. But it could also impact Lonzo's future free agency, costing him leverage because there might be multiple teams, and we don't know what we're projecting 3, 4, 5 years down the road could happen. But there could be some teams that would be in the market for a point guard with his size and his skill set, entering his still mid-20s at that point, that might not want anything to do with him because of the bullshit, fair or not, that comes along with LeVar Ball. So he's potentially long-term costing himself, his son, I should say, leverage, which when you lack leverage, you don't get as much money as you can. Now, sometimes teams will pay a guy max money just because they want to pay the guy max money because they want to make a statement of some kind. They don't want to deal with the distraction. But wouldn't you rather have 3, 4, 5 teams that could offer you max money to give you as many options and choices as possible, as opposed to being stuck with this one? And eventually, if this one team knows that nobody else is going to offer you max money, why would they necessarily have to feel the need to offer you max money? Because nobody else is going to be wanting to be bothered with you. But where he's really cost him already potentially is massive money in terms of a shoe deal. Massive money in terms of endorsements from the shoe deal aspect. I understand the desire to want to go it alone, the desire to not be a part of the big conglomerate that is Nike, or to a lesser degree the Adidases and Under Armours of the world, to not wanting to have to share in with your profits, not having to sit there and just be a piece of the pie as opposed to being the entire pie. But the fact of the matter remains, even though the cost, or excuse me, the amount of money to be made in rookie shoe deals has gone down in the NBA in recent years, that's still a lot of guaranteed money for a kid like Lonzo Ball. You make more money off of your shoe deal than you do your rookie contract. And LeVar Ball is rolling the dice, not with his money, but his kids' money, and his kids' earning power in the short term and eventually the long term as well. Like, you've got LeVar Ball sitting there talking about if any of these big 3 companies want to come to him. At first, you talk about they need to come to the table with $1 billion. That's not just based on any business or financial reality whatsoever of what anybody is going to dive into your kid on. Not even close. Jordan is getting about $100 million a year for the Jumpman brand. Why in the hell, if you wanted to say $1 billion over 10 years, why in the hell would somebody pay Lonzo fucking Ball, about 20-year-old kid coming out of UCLA who couldn't even lead his team to the final flipping 4, Michael Jordan money, without that Michael Jordan following and infrastructure built into place and that brand and name recognition? Give me a fucking break. There is one thing to be said about negotiating tactics of coming in high, but this guy is coming in so astronomically ludicrous high that nobody is ever going to even entertain the thought of doing business with him. And how is that potentially any damn good for Lonzo whatsoever? It's getting to the point where you're burning all these bridges. So if something went wrong with your big baller brand, Lonzo has nowhere to fucking go. And even talking about the $495 shoes or the autographed pair for $1,000 or whatever, that's not dealing anything in terms of marketing the product. That's not dealing with anything in terms of the infrastructure of where you're going to sell this product, because you can sit there and think that you can live as an internet-based brand, but you're never going to become the type of brand that you want to be and need to be in order to justify what you're doing by sitting there and being an internet-based solely company. You're going to have to get out there into the retail marketplace. Even if the retail importance has diminished in recent years, it is still there. It is still an important part. That infrastructure for Big Baller Brand is not there like it would be for a Nike. Furthermore, you're basically leveraging, if you're Lavar and Lonzo Ball, you're basically leveraging Lonzo's money that really isn't there to launch a brand, as opposed to doing what good business people and smart business people would do, that would be leveraging other people's money to start their own businesses and fund their businesses consistently. You don't use your own money to do that, you dipshit. You use other people's money to do so, and that's what's so astounding about this. It's one thing if you wanted to say, hey, I want to get into the retail apparel and shoe business. And that seems to be LeVar Ball's endgame in all of this, which is dumb and ridiculous anyways. Why would you want to get into a marketplace where Nike owns about 90% of the market share? It's just dumb. It's just not good business. It just isn't. So his end game is he wants to get in the retail game. Clearly, that's his big end game here. He's so fixated on the freaking Big Baller brand that that's what it's all about. Everything always funnels back into it. Why not take Lonzo and let him sign with one of the big three, get a few years of that money, get that brand name and recognition out there, get people to actually wear the product, use that money from somebody else again to leverage your own brand and break off on your own at that point in time, or Lonzo Ball's in his mid-20s and getting ready to enter the peak of his career. Then that's a different situation. You're trying to launch your own viable brand without that big-time built-in loyalty and name recognition. Where is the long-term business model here? To me, I just don't see where it is. I don't see where the end game is for this. And on top of all of that, with Lonzo Ball and this whole Big Baller brand shit, not only is this inevitably, at least short-term and definitely long-term, going to cost Lonzo Ball money, other companies that might potentially want a star player from a major market like Los Angeles might not want to do anything in terms of endorsements with the kid because they don't want to deal with his damn dad either. So imagine how much more money Lonzo could potentially lose out on in the long run. So for all these people that are talking about it's great that he's in his kids' lives and he clearly cares, what evidence do you have that indicates that LeVar Ball cares about anything other than LeVar Ball? Everything about his kids is all about LeVar. Everything about what these kids are going to be doing in the future, and we're focusing specifically on Lonzo now because he's about to graduate from being a college player. That 1 year that he was there, it was all a 1 year pit stop, mind you, to get to the NBA. Everything is about LeVar Ball. And that's where the problem is. It's not LeVar Ball's career, and it shouldn't be about LeVar Ball's career. This is about Lonzo Ball and Lonzo Ball's career and Lonzo Ball's earning power now and in the future. For all of these people that indicate to me that LeVar Ball cares a tremendous deal, I say bullshit. To me, if anything, he seems like a predator. Seems like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, that's what he is. He's a fucking predator. He is preying on his kids because he's trying to compensate for shit that he wasn't able to do because he wasn't good enough. So now he's going to use his kids to prop up his name and start off his own business. What is praiseworthy about that? So when you look at it from a standpoint of teams potentially not wanting to draft him, it might not matter that much at the end of the day, but if you didn't have the LeVar Ball factor, maybe the Boston Celtics would consider taking Lonzo at number one. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would want him. Probably not going to happen. But it could affect his abilities to be a leader, which if you're a point guard, you've got to be a leader. That's a requirement in the NBA. You have to be able to lead other men. How the fuck is Lonzo Ball going to be able to lead other men when he's getting led around still by his dad. And we have seen no indications whatsoever that anything other than that is going to happen as Lonzo Ball enters his 20s. Give me a break. Talking about how he could undercut the head coach, undercut an organization, which could stunt and regress Lonzo's development as a professional basketball player, impacting his future free agency, costing him leverage, which in a lot of cases can potentially cost you money. He's cost him already a ton of money in terms of the shoe deal, because I don't care if you're selling a couple hundred pairs at $495 a piece. Imagine selling a couple million units at $150 a piece and getting a guarantee from Nike regardless of how many units you damn sell. Or furthermore, imagine getting into the fold initially and getting in with another company maybe down the road where you get an equity piece, where you could get some ownership. And what other people are going to want to deal with Lonzo Ball, knowing if LeVar Ball is doing all this stupid shit in terms of, oh, the prices went up to $3 billion, they're not even going to entertain it because you're so stupid. Imagine somebody like Colgate toothpaste coming in and saying, hey, we think Lonzo's got a nice smile, nice bright smile, and we want him to endorse our product. LeVar is going to sit there and like, the starting price for 30 seconds is $50 million. It's my kid. He's worth 10 times the price of a Super Bowl ad space. This is how stupid this shit is. So to sit there and say that LeVar Ball doesn't hurt his kid or doesn't have the potential to really hold his kid back from a financial aspect, especially, bullshit. Bullshit. Stop propping up this dude like he's some type of hero, because he's fucking not. Let's call him for what he is. He is a predator. He is preying on his kids in order to advance his own agenda. And I don't give a damn who it is. That's pretty sick. Everything about your kids, you would think in theory, should be about your kids being as successful as possible. Unfortunately, we got leeches and scuzz buckets like LeVar Ball that like to leech onto their kids and suck them dry. So it wouldn't be surprising someday if you hear about another one of these players that went bankrupt, somebody like Lonzo Ball did, because ultimately his dad played with his fucking money, burned a lot of it, put it in other shitty investments, and Lonzo's 40 years old and he's fucking broke with a beer gut. Tell me that doesn't have the potential to happen here. But when all is said and done, when it comes to the blame game, look, LeVar Ball is not a positive influence for Lonzo at this point in time in his career and in his life. He just isn't. But don't blame LeVar. Blame Lonzo. Ultimately, this is about Lonzo Ball's career, his money, his legacy, not LeVar's. And even if he's 19, 20 years old, Lonzo Ball is a man. You have a penis and 2 testicles, and you're flowing full of testosterone. You were old enough to go to college. It's time to start fucking acting like it. Nut up and tell your dad to step in line or get the fuck out of line. And most importantly of all, shut the fuck up. Especially when you hear the reports or see the reports talk about your mom had a stroke a few months ago and LeVar isn't letting the kids see him. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit if my dad, Peter Arnold, was 6'10", 350 pounds. If he told me I couldn't see Bonnie Sue in the hospital because she had a stroke, I'm killing the motherfucker. Period. I'm going to beat him to within an inch of his life and beat him some more to where he flatlines so I can resuscitate him and beat the fuck out of him some more. You're not going to keep a son from his mother. What fucking man does that? But more importantly, what fucking man allows somebody else to keep you from your mother? Especially when she clearly needs you. Because it's a distraction? Bullshit. Ultimately, I fear for Lonzo Ball because I can see how much of a predator his dad is. And I can see what his dad's trying to do. His dad's trying to capitalize on his son. And I hope someday Lonzo Ball is smart enough to understand that maybe you love your dad and maybe you feel like he's been there all those years, but maybe he doesn't really have your best intentions at heart. And maybe he's not really that concerned about Lonzo. He's concerned about LeVar. And clearly, based off of the way LeVar conducts and carries himself, you get that indication that it is just about that. It is about LeVar. It is not about Lonzo. And that's a shame. But the only way this monster continues to fester and continues to grow and become bigger and bigger is because Lonzo enables it to happen. We can blame LeVar all we want. We can crap on Lavar all we want, and frankly, he deserves quite a bit of it. But when all is said and done, it is Lonzo who is the one that ultimately has to be accountable for what goes on in his life. This is ultimately his career. This is ultimately his legacy. This is ultimately his ability to make money. You're going to let anybody else screw that up? That's just why. Say your dad can launch an apparel and footwear brand? I mean, how stupid can you be? I don't give a crap. Lonzo Ball needs to grow the hell up. And the only person to blame here is Lonzo. Because if he told his dad to fuck off, either his dad would fuck off or it wouldn't be an issue. Either other way, it wouldn't matter. It matters because ultimately Lonzo allows it to happen. So stop blaming the dad. Start blaming the young man who clearly is giving indications that he's not ready to be a man yet.